case maybe they kind of want to stay together. And you can call it a group of persons or you can call it a gang.
And do you have any special teams that deal with gang issues at the Georgetown prison?
Yeah, if there's a gang or a group of persons, inmates who are being deemed as not complying with the rules and regulations of the prison, they have a task force that's been set up to deal with such inmates.
And how about inmates who are ringleaders or inmates who muscle other inmates?
Yeah, we find from time to time we have a lot of those, and those we try to, as much as possible to get those persons extracted from the division so that they will not pollute the other inmates as related to indulging in illegal activities.
In respect to overcrowding, how did that affect your job as a frontline manager?
Tremendously, sir.
Can you elaborate on that for the panel?
The present situation at Camp City Prison, the overcrowding, it impacts my duty as a duty officer tremendously in the area whereby for the previous question you have asked with the persons who are gang leaders or ringleaders, right, there is not, you take them from one division and put them to the next division, it tends to be the same because of the fact that you cannot properly segregate them, counsel them to get them to turn from the ways that they were deemed as unfit for the organization because of the overcrowding situation. As later, inmate tends to be more stressful when they're housed in a lot of inmates around them. The stress level raise a lot, and they lash out to be the inmate or the officers. You can't get to properly deal with situations. Instead of opposite to dealing with one inmate, you have to combat with several inmates as related. Because some prisoners, they will not want to be a part of certain situation, but the fact that they're enclosed with a lot of inmates actually end up jumping on the bandwagon also, so to speak.
And that goes to the issue of the subculture of the prison. How does the inmate code affect your work?
Pardon?
How does the inmate code, the code that the inmates have within themselves, their subculture, how does it affect how you interact with them?
The inmates code, if you're a seasoned officer, you pick up on it very quickly. If you're a junior officer, you take a little time to pick up on the codes and these things. But it doesn't affect me. If I know what you're saying in the code, I can understand. But if I don't know, then it will affect me.
How does the culture or the culture of not being a snitch, a rat, or a poacher affect how you deal with information or situations in a timely manner?
Yeah, go back to the same overcrowding situation. If an inmate wants to volunteer information as related to corrupt practice in the prison, he tends to keep it to himself because of the fact that he won't be safe in no other location because of the fact that you don't know who is who. He cannot be isolated whereby he can give valid information that will save the organization to some extent. He will not be safe in the environment still because of the enclosure. So it affects my ability to getting information from the inmates.
Did you work at the Georgetown prison on March 1st of 2016?
March 1st?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
How about March 2nd?
Yes, sir.
And let's go back to the full week before March 2nd. Did you interact with inmates in Capital Block A, for example, anytime the week before March 2nd?
I did, sir.
And did you get any inkling or indication that there was some disquiet or some rumblings within Capital Block, the new Capital Division?
No, I did not observe. They had no wrangling. Matter of fact, we had planned a tournament as officers versus the inmates from the Capital Block A Division because I found out that the inmates in the Capital A Division, they are more sports oriented. They have the best level of basketball players. So I think it was Wednesday, I had planned to have a competition because some of the officers who can play basketball with the inmates from the Capital Block A Division. So I had some interaction with them during the course of the week.
And how close to March 2nd was this discussion still on stream? Or the plan for this game on stream?
It was, I think, up to the start. I discussed it with some of the guys from the Monday, and it was planned for the Wednesday, I think it was.
Very well. And the Wednesday would have been March 2nd. What happened on March 2nd?
They had it, I think it was about 12 o'clock during the day. I was informed that there would be a joint service search that took place on the Wednesday.
And were you part of the joint service search?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the panel what unfolded during the joint services search, specifically to where you were assigned and what resulted from that search?
I was assigned to the Capital Block A Division and the Old Capital Division. The Capital Block A Division, I unearthed, I think, about 19 or 20 cell phones, improvised weapons, and a small quantity of narcotics in Capital Block A. The Old Capital Division had a quantity of small amount of cell phone, but a large quantity of narcotics in the Capital Block, in the Old Capital Division, but along with some improvised weapons. And
were any inmates sanctioned or written up as a result of the discovery of the prohibited devices?
No, because no inmate was not sanctioned because he was evacuated to the evacuation bay, and it was the building of itself we conducted the search.
And in respect to the prohibited items found, what became of those items?
It was documented in the duty officer's occurrence and filtered to the operation room and was sent to the officer in charge, or the operational officer at the time.
And would the duty officer have been you, Chief Officer Crawford?
On that day, it had more than one duty officer, I think, myself along with some two other duty officers. I can't recall the names at present.
Very well. What time did your shift end?
About 1906, so just after 7.
And did you leave the prison at that time?
I did. I went home after dismounted duty. I went home.
And did you have cause to return to? When did you return to the prison?
I was called about 21:30 by cell phone. Mr. Pilgrim, who was the officer in charge, notified me if I'm aware that there's a fire at the Camp Street prison. I said no, sir, I wasn't aware. And then I said, which part of the prison was on fire? He said the Capital Block A Division. I immediately got dressed and I reported to the prison, sir.
And were you dressed in uniform or civilian clothes?
Civilian clothing, sir.
Very well. And you reported to the prison. And what did you observe when you reported to the prison?
I noticed there are several officers in the prison yard, along with fire officers around the prison. The police officers also around the prison. And the Capital Block, they was concentrating Capital Block days. I saw there was no fire lit there at the time. It was just the debris of the fire that was.
Were you assigned to any specific task when you reported to the prison?
No, I wasn't assigned specifically, but being a prison officer, I was not on duty. So I stayed there and I supported the ranks who was actually on duty.
Very well. Did you go off duty that evening?
No, I remained there to remain up the night.
And did you have a chance to get your rest?
No, sir.
What did you do?
I remained there during the course of the night, and at the clean about 6:05, I assisted with checking off of the tally. Then they assisted with the feeding up of the prison also.
Okay, and after you did that, what happened next?
After I did same, I was informed during the course of the morning, I think it was about 10 something, I was informed by Assistant Superintendent of Prison, Mr. Hudson, that to report to the prison officer's post, which is right opposite the prison. I immediately went across there, and I noticed there are officers from the various prison locations at the sports club.
And what was the purpose of that meeting?
It's about 50 minutes after we assembled there, and Mr. Graham, along with Mr. Elliott and Mr. Pilgrim, they came and they addressed us, informing us that there will be an evacuation of the Capital Block A Division, and they have some inmates who will be extracted from the division to place to the reception area.
Were you assigned any roles in respect to that operation?
Yes, I was.
And what was your role?
My role was I was tasked to pick 9 persons along with myself to be set up to be part of the task force that will do the extraction of the inmates to the reception area.
And what happened next?
After he was addressed, myself and the nine other officers, we went to get our gears and we went into the prison to take up a strategic position. After which,
So hang on a second. So you were the person who selected the 9 men that would comprise your task force?
yes, sir.
And were these task force officers that you selected or random officers?
Some of which had the experience of being a task force officer before, some of which have the capability of carrying out such duties.
And when you selected the 9 men to work with you, did you give them a briefing in terms of how you wanted them to conduct themselves?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you mentioned that you picked up your gear. What gear would the officers have picked up?
To carry out such exercise, you need restraints, handcuff foot cuffs, and you need shields.
Okay, very well. And at the point in time where they picked up that equipment, and at the point in time where you briefed them, did you have knowledge who the inmates were that would be extracted?
No, sir.
How did you become aware of who would be extracted?
While we was in the prison yard at our strategic point, the inmates were coming out to the Capital A Division. Mr. Pilgrim, who was officer in charge, he called me and informed me and identified that ex-prisoner, that is the first person we need to extract. And that's how I was aware of the inmate that to be extracted.
All right. Well, tell the panel, I'm not going to interrupt you further. Tell the panel how when you got to the prison yard, what unfolded and what took place with the extractions.
Okay. While at our strategic point, was called by Mr. Pilgrim. He identified the first inmate. I then went back and took a section of the 9 officers. We went in and we made the takedown of prisoner Allicock. It was very fast, professional, and he had no injuries. Then quickly take him to the reception area, restrain him, and return back into the prison yard. After which, the prisoners continued to come out of the Capital Block A Division. I was then called again, informed that there's the next inmate, Collison, which is also one of the persons that we have to extract. I then went back to the small section of the team, went in, we grabbed Collison, he started to resist, and he started to fight, and until when the restraints, we had to restrain him, arms and legs, and keep fighting throughout. And he was then taken to the reception area, and we received no injuries, and I went back into the prison yard and assembled back to the other team.
Now let me ask you this. While that was going on, were you aware of what was happening in the surrounding areas of the prison?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell the panel what was going on at the point in time you were removing Mr. Collison from the tarmac?
Inmates from the other location, they started yelling, they started shouting, they started bombing. Especially from the Capital Block A Division, they started to stamp and shouted, and I did not hear exactly what they were saying, but there was a lot of noise because of the distance. They keep yelling and shouting and screaming and stuff like that.
And did that impact on your work as an extraction team member?
Yeah, it made it a little difficult because when they started reacting like that, the inmates who were extracting, they feel that they were supported. So they end up making it very difficult because they also start to react the same way.
And how was Collison behaving as you move him? Well, let me ask you this. You may have said it, but I missed it. You were moving him from the tarmac to where?
The reception area.
And were you moving him bodily? Were you physically lifting him and moving him or marching him?
We had to physically lift him because he was fighting, swinging, and scrambling at the shields and stuff like that. So you have to actually force him to go to the reception area.
So he was not compliant?
Very well, so he was not compliant.
Could you recall any senior officer? Well, let me ask you this. When you deliver him to the reception area, what did you do next?
I returned back to and assembled back the group, the officers.
And who took custody of Collison?
A reception officer, sir.
Very well. So you would not, would you have seen whether or not an officer spoke to him?
No, sir.
Very well. So you went back with your team to the tarmac.
Yes, sir.
And what happened when you returned to the tarmac?
At that time when we returned back to the tarmac, I heard a loud noise coming from in the building, and myself along with Mr. Samuels, Mr. Pilgrim, and other officers, we ran up to the Capital B division and noticed the inmates was breaking the partition wall. It was lashing, it was breaking the hole in the wall. Myself, Mr. Samuels, Mr. Pilgrim, informed the inmates that they don't have to be a part of the Capital Black division. They don't have to be a part of it. They can come out of the building and don't be a part of that. While doing the same, some missiles started to throw at us. Right? So we had to retreat and assemble back into on the tarmac. After which we regrouped, we then went back into the Capital Black B division, and we instruct the inmates again to come out. They don't have to be a part, and they start to come out of the building. They start rush out of the building and place into the evacuation bay. While doing the same, I noticed a fire mattress was lit, and the hole that was already there, they threw a lit fire mattress at the middle of the hole. Mr. Samuel then shouted, fire extinguishers, fire extinguishers. Myself and another officer ran, got the fire extinguishers, extinguished the mattress that was lit in the middle of the hole, after which the next mattress was lit and blackened the hole also, but we could not have extinguished that because the fire was on the inside and the mattress was on the back of the mattress was blackened the hole. After myself and the other officer tried to extinguish it, we then retreated back out of the building, the Capital Black B division. The door was left open. Because the fire extinguisher then started to get smoke. The stuff started to get so wet. The door was left open. When we come out of the building, I noticed the fire was lit at the front of the Capital Black B division. Right? We then went to grab our shields and tried to extinguish the fire that was lit at the front of the door of the Capital Black A division. At the time, the siren was sounded, and the officers say, when we have a fire hydrant in the prison yard, we then roll out that to the horse. Myself and some officers, we then start to roll it out and send water up to the building. At the time, the fire service came and they assisted us also, and they continued to throw water in the building. And the fire, the smoke and the heat start to get more as we think we start to get more. I then took the keys and tried to open the door. When I put my foot on the door, the heat was so much that it started to melt my sneakers bottom. He then tried, I then ran down back, get the water, ran back to the building, tried again, and we, up to the fire service and our officers, we tried, and tried to get the door to open and also extinguish the fire.
What sort of fire extinguisher did you use in Capital Block B?
What type or?
Yes, was it a chemical or a water extinguisher?
Chemical.
A dry chemical
Dry
extinguisher?
chemical, those were the whites, yeah, dry chemical.
And did you receive any instructions while you were in Capital Block B in terms of the use of that extinguisher?
Instructions as related to how the fire?
Yes.
When Mr. Samuels shouted fire extinguisher, myself and the other officers grabbed and we just went straight to the fire and we just out it.
Right, and were you told at any time to not overuse the
Yeah,
extinguisher?
Mr. Samuels then said don't kill it or something like that. That's related to not using too much because the smoke started to get heavy. So he said don't use that too much. So we just out it and.
Did you have any personal protective equipment when you were fighting the fire?
No, I just operated on instinct and natural reaction. No fight, no protective gear or anything.
I appreciate that, but in any event, did the smoke or the chemicals from the extinguisher affected you in any way as you were working in that area?
It did, sir.
And how?
I started to, I had no mask on, so it could not have breathed well and could not have seen too okay also.
Now you left Capital Block B, and you testified that you saw smoke coming from Capital Block A.
Yes, sir.
What did you do?
I immediately ran to the front and tried to get the fire was lit from the inside, so we could not have done much as related to get the extinguisher to go on the inside. So we still tried to pour water from the outside and tried to spray as much as we could.
Right. And what else did you do?
I also tried to open the door, but apparently like it was jammed from the inside.
Now, when you were engaged in that action, what were the inmates doing at that point in time? Was it safe for officers?
No, they was pushing improvised weapon through the grills, and they was cursing and very rowdy, throwing liquid stuff on us, right? Urine and stuff like that. They was throwing and was pushing improvised weapon. So you had to combat with that and also try to get a shield and also try to use the water to extinguish the fire.
So I want you to describe, you just mentioned the shield. I want you to describe what the officers were doing with the shields and what other officers were doing as well in that area.
They use the shield to defend yourself from the liquid that was thrown and the improvised weapon that was pushed through the grills.
And so what did that entail?
It entails that the inmates was trying to hurt us as officers.
No, but what were the officers doing? Where did they have the shields?
Braced towards the grill.
And as they have the shields braced against the grill, was fire and smoke affecting them in any way?
Yes, it was very hot, and the smoke tends to sometimes the smoke keep getting heavier and heavier, and the heat started to get. As I said earlier, when I put my feet against the door, they started to melt the bottom of my sneakers.
And did you get the officers to hold the line there?
Yeah, some of them was trying. Some of them was stayed. Some of them was complaining that they did too much heat. So I tell them, be the chief. I tell them to stay. And we have to try to get the door open. And some of them was trying to actually retreat and just keep calling on them to just work after work, fight it.
What else did you do to try to get into Capital Block A?
We then went around to the back and we started breaking myself, Mr. Cordial, and Sarah also tried to break the wall from the side to get the inmates, because some of them was packed to the rear of the building. So we're trying to break the wall from there so that they can come out.
What about the door? There was a side door there as well, wasn't there?
Correct.
Did you attempt to open that door?
Yeah, but that also be futile because apparently, I don't know, it was tampered with or something, because we tried the keys and they did not open. So we just decided to forget about the keys and go straight into breaking.
And were inmates, this was in the midst of the fire?
Yes, sir.
And were inmates communicating with you at that point in time as you were doing that?
Yeah, they was shouting, "Come here, Mr. Crafty, open, Mr. Crafty, open for me," and they was trying, and they were shouting and trying to get it open at the same time, and also trying to get the wall to break.
Do you remember any particular inmate that was communicating with you?
I think a person by the name of Samuels or Sammy. Can't recall his name, a Douglas guy.
And what did he say to you?
Right. Mr. Crafty, if you get me out, God gonna bless you. God gonna bless you.
And did that inmate survive the fire?
He did.
He survived the fire. Anyway, how were the inmates rescued from that building?
After we went back to the front and tried to get it open, then Mr. came and he worked the division pretty often than I do. So he came, took the keys, and he tried to open, and Mr. Koji tried to use the electrical cutter to cut it open, but the cutter it overworked and just damaged up. So Mr. Lykin and Mr. Koji used the fire extinguisher and bounced the door. They keep bouncing, while the one bouncing, the other one turning, and subsequently it opened. After the door was opened, the prisoners from the old Capital Block, they started to break down the abolition area. And I could recognize prisoner backers along with some other inmates shouting, Mr. Crawford, let me go for them. They then jump over to the other side, because the buildings are very close. They then jump over to the new Capitol building. Prisoner backers, he ran in and immediately ran out because there's too much for him. Since he ran in, he ran out back. and you enter and get put on a boots, you put on a jersey, and the along with the fire officers is keep pouring water into the building. So I sent him around and tell him to go at the back and tell him to come to front. Right? He then ran at the back, and then the stabilizers had to come out of the building, and subsequently the building was some who survived came out, and then we went in and get the rest. Some persons, myself and other officers rushed the person who was badly burnt to the front gate, straight to the hand him over to officers who take him to the hospital. The ones that have minor injuries, myself and a few officers and inmates, we then take them to the infirmary, and we set up a triage situation there, and we try to deal with what we can deal with, and persons who we cannot deal with, rush to the hospital.
So this became a collaborative effort between inmates and officers?
Yeah, everybody's working.
Very well. And I got a final question for you, and I ask everybody: what was the impact on all of this on you, as an officer and an individual?
Well, as a male figure, I try to say that I'm mentally and physically fit as related to withstand these things, but there was counseling available, but I said I'm mature, I don't need it. But from time to time, it will affect me in my quiet moments, knowing that those inmates who have played with, who have counseled, who have talked with, they are not here anymore. So I try to put up a front, but it affects me a lot. And to know that also my livelihood has been threatened also because of the fact that I know I did my utmost, and some persons, inmates, they think that I've done nothing, and they disrespect me, they threaten my life, they threaten my family life, and every day I go to work. Some inmates, they know what I've done or what we have tried to done, and some of them just see it as nothing and just disrespect it and just feel that, they can see it, threaten my life, attack, and these type of things. So it affects me tremendously. But I've never went to no counseling or so forth because I think that I'm mature enough, I can deal with it. But that's how it affects me, my life to some extent.
There was one thing I forgot to ask you, and I know the chairman has his hands on the button, so I gotta ask it quick. Were you the officer that opened the Capital B door when Samuels ordered that door to be opened? Or who was the officer, to the best of your knowledge?
I can't recall who was the officer who was opening the Capital B, Block B division, but I know it was open. Myself and Mr. Samuels and Mr. Pilgrim, we ran up there and Mr. Pilgrim instructed the inmates that they don't have to be part of what was going on in the Capital Block. They can come out of the division. I can't recall who was the officer who actually opened that door. But I know actually I was probably, while the inmates was coming out, I was the last person to come out of the building. After we extinguished the fire that was lit in the middle, I was actually the last person to come out, and the door was left open, and I keep shouting. So I hit on the door a few times because the place was kind of small, it was all smoke. I hit on the door a few times with my baton, indicating to the inmates that this is another entrance that they can actually come out. So that was actually the last person to come out of that building.
All right,
What?
Commissioners of Inquiries, Justice Collison, Smart Johnson, and Steve Barton. May I have a seat?
While this court is bending over backwards as far as possible to entertain your reasonable request, and don't consider this a stricture personally, it would be better if you had intimated your concerns to us before we came, so we can save some time. But I think Council has addressed your concerns. And Mr. Peters?
Good morning, Your Honor.
I think that Mr. Pilgrim can come back tomorrow, is it? Tomorrow? Tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Yes. Would you swear the witness, please?
Your Honor, yesterday the commission had asked me to produce evidence of Senior Superintendent Samuel's trip to Bartica. And Mr. Samuels have some original books and records. I'm not sure if you want me to ask him questions about that and then, or whether Commission Counsel will. I'm not sure. But he has the books and records that show his trip to Bartica on the 2nd and the 3rd of March.
Has it with him?
He has it with him, yes.
How long you can take with that?
It's just a matter of 3 or 4 questions.
We can't rely on your mathematics, you know.
With all due respect,
Mr. Chairman.
good morning.
Just a minute, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Uh,
at the 4th question, you cut me off.
Pardon me?
At the 4th question, you can cut me off. I make an undertaking 3 or 4 questions, no more than 4.
All right, carry on.
Good morning, Senior Superintendent Samuels.
Good morning.
I'm Selwyn Peters. I represent the Guyana Prison Service. Do you have any books or records in respect to your trip to the Mazaruni prison on March 2nd to March 3rd of 2016?
I have in my possession the book that is kept by the boat monitor, which would show when I departed Bartik on the morning of March 3rd, 2016. The book that they would have entered me in on my way to Mazaruni on March 2nd is at Puerto Rico. The person just made contact saying that they managed to get possession of the book.
What's that book called?
It's a book that is maintained by the monitor.
No, what's it called? It got a name. I mean, you have a name for a Corinth book and this book.
Can you get the book and look at it? Where's the book?
Mr. Chair, good morning.
Let us finish with this.
It is on this point, please.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I would wish to go on record of saying that this bit of evidence is not only unprofessional, but it should not be allowed. This witness has never said that he made any record, which the commission has on record from yesterday is evidence. And for counsel to attempt to get that bit of evidence through the back door should not be allowed. This witness made no record of his trip. He made no entry. And why would he be allowed to give evidence as to books on record establishing that he was in point A and point B at a specific time? If counsel wishes to get that bit of evidence, then counsel should bring the perfect person to tender that evidence so that he can corroborate the evidence of this witness. And I believe to allow it through the back door, it embarrasses because of this bit of evidence is purely hearsay and should not be allowed.
Mr. Chairman, I requested as counsel for Mr. Samuels that he produce his hotel invoice, that he, if possible, make best efforts to get the boat log from Bartica to Puerto to and from. He has made those best efforts, and he's brought that material to you. That's demonstrated evidence. There's no hearsay. He's brought a thing before you. Certainly, if Mr. Todd wants the record holder to be here, and in normal proceedings, if the record is here, the record holder need not be here if you have the original record. And that's what was delivered to us this morning, and that's what's in the possession of Senior Superintendent Samuels. We believe that this evidence would be very probative evidence. The commission has heard that Senior Superintendent Samuels was leading the task force, that Senior Superintendent Samuels was there at the point in which the events occurred. If there's some document or thing that shows he was not there, he could have been somewhere else, that is evidence that could be properly received with the greatest degree of respect.
This is what I'm ruling. That bit of evidence has relevance as far as the commission is concerned. It would do no harm, and we're not bound to stand by the strict rules of evidence. So let it be produced.
Senior Superintendent Samuels, the chairperson had just asked you to read the name of the book in which that record would be contained. Can you read the name of the book on the face, from the face of it?
It is titled Speedboat Operators Monitors Book, and it is dated 04/02/16. That is the date this book would have commenced.
And can you turn to the page in which your entry would have been in for your travel from from Bartica to Perico?
Yes.
And can you tell the panel what time you would have left Perico? Sorry, Bartica.
The boat, according to the time recorded in the operators,
Objection, if I may.
is 8:20 hours.
Judge, I have to voice an objection at this point in time. I have no problem with the timing Mr. Samuels left Bartica, but if you're going to use the Speedboat Operators Book as the best rule of evidence, that might be a bit problematic. If it was a book kept in a regular course of business by the prisons department enunciating its travel, we could acquiesce to that. But a Speedboat Operators Book being kept by someone we have no idea who he or she is, pose a bit of an issue regarding the best evidence rules here.
I agree with you, but you haven't heard me.
Oh,
We could relax the strict rule of evidence if it's going to help us.
Before this even came into play, I had no problem with Mr. Samuels' travel routine. There was itinerary. I had no prima facie evidence regarding itinerary. But this particular book poses a new issue to me right now.
Okay.
That's my concern. Bring the prison records. If he's a prison officer, there must be books kept in a regular course of business.
Let me say again, those rules we can relax if it's going to help us and it wouldn't cause any
this might cause
hardship.
This might cause
I
something.
have ruled, proceed.
Mr. Chairman, yes. So you left at 8:20 a.m. and what time you would have arrived in Perico?
The trip would have taken about an hour and 10 minutes to hour 20 minutes, which is the normal time the boat would take for the journey.
And from Perico to Georgetown, how would you have gotten to the prison from Perico?
By a service car.
And that a service car would be what vehicle?
There's a Toyota Camry.
No, is it a vehicle driven by an officer or a member of the Guyana Prison Service?
Yes.
And would the member of the Guyana Prison Service keep a record of his travel to Perico to pick you up and his journey back to Georgetown? Would he have kept the mileage, etc.?
Based on the SOP, he should have done so.
And when you arrive at Georgetown Prison, would the officer in the scanning room keep a record of your arrival at the prison?
Based on the SOP, they should have.
And would the officer in operations keep a record of your arrival as well, or your movement from the scanning room to the yard?
The operations is not fully necessary, but my movements could have been caught on the surveillance cameras at the prison.
Mr. Chairman, we have copies of the station master's or station monitor book. We also have a copy of the invoice for the hotel that Senior Superintendent Samuels stayed at. And we have a copy of a picture that Senior Superintendent Samuels took on the 2nd of March 2016 outside of his hotel in the Coyote-Mazaruni region. At some point today, we'd want to tender that. I believe we've provided the commission already with the operations room documentation in respect to the times that Samuels would have arrived at the Georgetown prison and entered the yard.
You could tender them now?
I believe that I believe all of it was laid over with the commission secretary already.
Laid over? And you know formally are asking for it to be tendered as exhibit?
I would like at some point, it may not be now because I'm not sure if the secretary have them down here. So at some point we'd want them to be duly received by Your Honor and the commissioners.
Okay, we'll defer it for then.
Very well, thank you.
Yeah.
I have no further questions for the witness.
Okay.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the Commission, Mr. Peters, Counsel of the Commission, and Deputy Director Samuels. I'm Attorney Duke. I'll ask you a few questions at this point in time. If I'm going too fast, kindly stop me, and I'll go as slowly as I possibly can to accommodate you.
Very well.
First, let me preface my remarks or questions in saying that I have the utmost respect for the Guyana Prison Authority and the function that this police service plays in our country. It's a very difficult task that you have a job to do it. It's not a job I would want to do myself, so I accommodate you first off on your role.
Thank you.
I know the police serve and protect us, the firemen rush into dangerous buildings and fires to save our lives, and I know you all have to guard over some of the most difficult elements in our society. So I must commend you. However, there's some issues which I must raise with you at this point in time. I will start with the first issue being, you made a reference yesterday that you took note that, if I may, that the unsafeness of the prison, the convict prisoners, you of yourself made that assessment sometime during your duty role. Do you recall that statement you made yesterday?
Yes, sir.
Could you explain to me what does that mean to you, sir? The unsafeness of accommodations at the prisons. What does that mean to you, sir?
Security, as it is known, has various components. Those that are provided by humans and security that is provided by the actual structures of the prison. And what I alluded to yesterday is that based on my assessment of those structures, especially some 90% of them being constructed of wood, and the issues I would have observed over a period of time with what we would refer to as the newly constructed new capital division, I concluded that those buildings were not strong enough to offer the level of security that was required to house prisoners. This is taken into consideration as well, the various categories of prisoners we would house for the various offenses that are being committed in society.
If I may, I respect your response. Let me ask you this, however. Before I get to the configuration, well, go to the configuration. You said the prisoner makeup of Georgetown prison, it houses several kinds of prisoners. Convicted prisoners, prisoners on remand, and persons who are being held on a temporary basis. Is that correct?
I didn't get the last one that you mentioned.
Persons who are being held temporarily. In other words, persons awaiting court appearances.
Yes, sir.
Now, without having any bifurcation, they don't bifurcate the prisons. They put everybody in one lump sum area. Is that correct?
No, sir.
Explain that part to me, please.
There is the reception department of the prison. That is where prisoners upon admission to the prison are processed. During that period, a lot of things are taken into consideration as it relates to the offense of the prisoner, age of the prisoner, and based on prior knowledge of the person. For example, the media might highlight someone in a way that would portray them to be very influential. So all of those factors are taken into consideration when prisoners are being located. The crime that they would have committed would either place the prisoner to be deemed as an ordinary prisoner, which means that the security risk that prisoner poses is not that high. You have a B-watch prisoner, which the level of security or the threat that that prisoner poses is just above that of an ordinary prisoner. You have a special watch prisoner, and you have a high-profile prisoner.
Who made that assessment, sir?
That assessment is made between the officer in charge, the reception supervisor, the second in command of the prison, or someone that is designated by the officer in charge.
Now, on the day in question, going back to March 3rd, 2016,
Yes.
the composite of prisoners in capital A,
Yes.
would you agree with me, sir? There were persons who were convicted in that cell block?
In capital A?
Yes, I'm asking.
No, sir.
Persons on remand in that cell block?
Person to remand, yes.
Persons who have not yet been convicted then?
No, no convicted prisoner.
Understood. So they were on remand.
Remand, yes.
So they were not yet adjudicated as far as their guilt or innocence. They're just being held there.
Yes, sir.
Understood. Now, you would have had some idea of who the various persons were based on your past experience with the interaction with them. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, your particular training, right? Were you ever trained in any sort of crisis management assessment seminars?
It is part of what I would have covered in my social work degree, sir.
Did you do any negotiations training? Prison negotiations training programs?
Nothing extensive, sir.
Understood. Did you do any direct negotiation one-on-one programs with anyone?
No, sir.
Let's turn for 1 second to the door. This prison door which we all keep hearing about, the lock, the chub lock.
Yes, sir.
That chub lock system is what we employ normally in Guyana, right? The lock with a key. Is that
Yes.
correct? Are you familiar with any more safer locking systems? For example, is there any remote control systems we have in Guyana yet? Remote control locks?
In all of our prisons, we would use the chub locks.
Right. Would you agree with me, sir? Have you ever seen, Major, have you ever seen any remote control locking facilities at any of the prisons you have a chance to visit, let's say in the US, London, England, or in the Caribbean?
Yes, I have.
Right. And to the best of your knowledge, those particular locking mechanisms would operate by a remote system. In other words, the main door would operate by a remote press, open, press back lock. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
Right. If you had to make an assessment, a judgment call, would you say that might be more helpful in a situation that what you incurred on the day in March 3rd, 2016? Would it be a more helpful situation, possibly?
Mr. Chairman, I worked in prisons in North America, so I'm familiar with those locks. This inmate or the remote locking mechanisms, this witness cannot give evidence about that mechanism unless he had experience with those locks.
Well, let him answer.
That's what I'm asking.
Based on my knowledge, sir, as the council would have asked if I have seen it, yes, I can only speak from my knowledge of observation. The actual use of this I cannot attest to, so I am not sure. Under the circumstances that would have prevailed on March 3rd, if the remote or key-operated lock would have been effective in any way.
Now, to the best of your knowledge, sir, after the experience you had with this chub lock system, were there any discussions within the last month by your departmental heads as to procuring a more safer mechanism? Have you all discussed it at all?
I am unable to say that, sir, because as it should be known, I proceeded on vacation or on leave the day following the incident at the prison. So I have not been involved in any discussion administratively or otherwise at the prison.
All right. Let's go back now. We're going back to the actual day when you left Bartica to come to town. That's March 3rd, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. You said when you arrived in the prison yard, you encountered or you saw what you would categorize as chaos. Things were happening fluidly around you. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, could you have made an assessment at that point in time regarding the prisoners in capital A? You knew there were some who were being agitators or persons who were insightful. And your observation statements yesterday, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
But you could not fairly enunciate or state that all the prisoners in Capital 8 will be given the same way. You couldn't say that, could you?
No, sir.
Understood. Now, you said measures became even more chaotic, and then you went to Capital B to evacuate certain prisoners. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Upon arrival at Capital B, there was a initial confrontation between you and I think was another companion, I think it was Pilgrim. Who accompanied you that day to Capital B block?
Superintendent Pilgrim and a number of other ranks.
All right. Now, when you went to Capital B with Mr. Pilgrim and your company, you met some prisoners initially at the doorway, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Between you and the prisoners, there was certain interaction, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Could you explain to me exactly what happened there at Capital B?
We went to Capital B with the objective, as you would have indicated, to evacuate the prisoners. The prisoners were, after the door was open, the prisoners were instructed to come out of the division, and they did not comply with the instruction. At that point,
When you say the prisoners were instructed, by who?
myself and Superintendent Pilgrim, the prisoners did not comply with the instruction, and chunks of concrete, which I suspected came from the separation wall between Capital A and B, started to be, were hurled in my direction.
But if I may, sir, when you arrived initially at Capital B, did you have weapons drawn at that point in time?
If you're asking initially, no, sir, because I went there twice.
You went there twice. Therefore, it was in your second attempt to enter Capital B is when you had the weapons drawn.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, I realize that things were wrong. You're going very fast. However, I'm asking you this question. With the weapons being drawn, did the prisoners respond to you then, or was
Just
it
a minute. Is it weapons or weapons?
But if I may, there were two.
I'm hearing weapons.
But if I may, there was you had your weapon.
I
Mr.
had
Pilgrim also had his weapon as well.
Yes.
Right. My question would be, the prisoners, did they respond to you with the weapons in hand, or after you placed those weapons away, then they responded and came out of the building?
They responded while my weapon was in my hand.
Yeah. Now, you see, that's where I have a bit of a problem with, because I'm going from the statements of Mr. Hudson. Now, I didn't get a chance to see him on the stand. I'm reading what he says. Do you agree with it or not? I'll read this portion. If I may.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hudson's evidence was taken in camera. I'm not sure.
Oh, the camera. Oh.
Or do you want me to
The camera. Oh, I didn't realize. I'm afraid. I withdraw it. Fair enough. I didn't realize it's the camera. Now, how long did you, upon entering Capital B, at that point in time, did you interact with the prisoners? Was it 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Do you recall?
Let me be specific in that I did not enter Capital B.
At the doorway. At the
catwalk.
The catwalk. Fair. How long did you interact with them at that point in time?
That is on the second time I went there.
Yes, please.
There was some degree of compliance in about a minute or less.
A minute or less.
Yes.
You said, well, Bidron, were you able to recognize any of the prisoners? Did you know them, the ones you were interacting with at Capital B?
Yes.
All right. And were they receptive to you based upon what you were telling them, the proposed relationship between you and them, or this was defying you? What was happening there and then?
I don't get you clearly, sir.
All right. Were they responding to you in a favorable manner? Were they listening to you? Were they taking the things that you were saying, or were they just opposing you?
The prisoner that was directly in front of the door in Capital B was not a prisoner that was originally housed in Capital B. So he was very confrontational.
Understood.
That prisoner was identified as German Otto,
Mr. Otto.
who was from Capital A. The other prisoners who were in my sight that were from capital B. They, as far as I observed, did not offer much resistance. They were chanting and making threats. But based on what they said when I went up to capital B on the first occasion, is that the reason they were not coming out is because of threats that were made to them by prisoners who came to that division from capital A.
So in other words, there were some prisoners that were being subjugated to the will of other prisoners. That's a fair statement then.
Yes, sir.
Right. So, would you be able to say, as to capital A now, did they have that same composition? There were some prisoners who were afraid of other persons in capital A from your observation?
I was unable to see any prison in capital A, sir.
All right. Keeping with the same train of thought.
Yeah.
You mentioned capital B, Mr. Otto.
Yes.
There came a time when you dealt with Mr. Otto. How did you deal with that aspect of Mr. Otto? What was done in that instance?
On the day?
On the said day?
After I would have observed Otto in front of the capital B door, and repeated instructions were given for the prisoners to evacuate the division, and there was some amount of compliance. As far as I'm aware, Otto went back through the hole on the separation wall.
All right. Did you ever, during that point in time, or at what point in time did you go back, or did you file a report with your deputy, with Mr. Graham? At what point in time did you file a report, Mr. Graham?
I spoke to Mr. Graham on his arrival on the scene. I can't remember what time it was.
Well, there's a statement here, right? Which, again, I have to ask the commission first. Mr. Graham testimony was also in camera? I think it's yet.
Mr. Graham hasn't appeared yet.
Understood. You said you reported to Mr. Graham upon your arrival. Did you report to Graham subsequently? Do you recall reporting to Graham subsequently?
On his arrival on the scene.
All right, that was the scene. And did you tell Mr. Graham that there were prisoners who were trapped in the building? Do you recall saying that to Mr. Graham?
Yes, I told Mr. Graham that.
All right. You're referring to prisoners in capital A or capital B at that point in time?
Capital A, sir.
Thank you. So in essence, to the best of your knowledge and recollection, there were prisoners who were trapped in capital A block.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now, you said you could not give a clear configuration as to who was doing what in capital A. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
If you couldn't say if all the prisoners in capital A were of like minds, you couldn't say that.
No, sir.
Now, which officer, to the best of your knowledge, within the prison system, is properly trained in prison negotiation in crisis management, to the best of your knowledge?
Sir, if you should refer to our SOP when it comes to negotiation, it clearly says that we call in the police force and the Ghana Defense Force.
Therefore, you're telling me, sir, are you telling me, or let me ask the question this way, are you telling me you're not aware of anyone within the prison establishment who's trained to negotiate a crisis management?
Let me say to you that all prison officers, in order for me to say who's best, I will have to do an...
I never said best. I said who is trained to the best of your knowledge. Because I went through the CVs, right?
Yeah.
Presented to me. Save and except, well, Mr. Graham, I didn't see anyone else trained. Do you know of anyone who's trained?
I thought you just mentioned Carl Graham.
Sorry?
You're asking them outside of Carl Graham,
If he
who
knows
else
anyone
is
else
trained?
who might be trained.
I'm not going to entertain cross-talk between companies.
Sorry,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman. I totally, I was
What's
trying
the
to
question?
understand the question.
All officers, as far as I'm aware, are exposed to basic crisis intervention issues.
Do you know-
Because basically that's what we deal with every day.
Not exposed to crisis. I'm asking you a direct question. If you don't know, you don't.
Formal training, I do not know.
Thank you, sir. Now, I've noticed you have worked as a prison officer for several years. How many years have you been a prison officer?
Just over 15 years.
15 years. Now, in your 15 years as a prison officer, you have come across several scenarios. Is that not correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. I put to you, sir, on the day in question, on the March 3rd, 2016, that scenario was overwhelming. It was a very chaotic scenario.
It was chaotic, yes.
And nowhere in your training procedural manual were you ever trained to encounter that kind of unique problem.
We are prepared to deal with such scenarios. It is part of our emergency action drills.
Sir, an emergency action drill and an actual ability to deal, you had 16 bodies recovered. You agreed with me? 16 persons were lost their lives.
I'm not aware of 60.
Persons lost their lives.
Correct.
What I'm asking you, well, which one? I'll ask you down the road. Let's just go slow. You must appreciate the fact, right, that this is a very traumatic event.
Yes, sir.
All right. And we're trying to find at this point in time resolution or ways to make certain it does not occur again. You could appreciate that.
Yes.
All right. So in asking that, I'm asking with a tone, your procedural manual or your experience being trained, have you ever trained to deal with a situation like what you dealt with that day in question?
I am prepared to deal with such situations based on my training.
Understood. So in essence, you're telling me that a door being locked, you've done the same exact things you did the day in question. You've done it no way different.
No, sir.
Understood. How long did it take you to remove that lock, sir?
The lock has not been removed.
How long did it take you to open the door?
It's over 10 minutes.
Over 10 minutes. You agree with me, sir, that 10 minutes is a lot of time in light of what was happening around you and that day.